Listen carefully, because this is the kind of story that sounds unbelievable until you realize it is happening somewhere in the real world right now. A man once looked at me like I was nothing. Not because I was cruel. Not because I was weak. Not because I had failed him. He rejected me because I was not successful enough. At the time, I was just a woman trying to build something from nothing. I had no rich family behind me, no powerful last name, no luxury car, no office tower, just an idea, a laptop, and a dream that would not leave me alone. He called me too small. He told me I was not the kind of woman he could build a future with. He ended our engagement like he was dropping a weight he no longer wanted to carry. And then he walked away with his head high, as if he had done something noble. But years later, when my company became one of the biggest tech empires in the country, when my name started appearing on magazine covers, investor lists, and global headlines, the same man came back. Not with an apology, not with shame. He came back with arrogance. He came back asking for a job. And when I saw his name on the application, I did not feel rage. I felt something colder, peace, because I had waited a long time for this moment. Not to destroy him, not to scream, not to embarrass him in public. I waited so I could show him exactly what success looks like when it grows from pain. And I made sure the interview would be the one moment in his life he would never forget. My name is Arya, and this is the story of the day the man who once rejected me had to sit across from me and beg for a place in my world. Years ago, before the money, before the power, before the glass towers and the board meetings and the security guards at every entrance, I was just a girl with a vision. I worked from a tiny apartment with peeling paint and one broken chair, while other people were going out, getting married, or living the comfortable life. I was staying awake past midnight, learning, coding, building, failing, and starting again. I did not have a wealthy circle. I did not have investors calling me. I had rejection, stress, and a heart that refused to give up. And during that time, I was engaged to a man named Daniel. Back then, I loved him with everything I had. I believed love meant standing beside someone while both of you were still growing. I believed the right man would see my struggle and respect it. I believed that if two people loved each other, they would build together. But Daniel did not think like that. He was always obsessed with image. He liked the idea of success more than the meaning of it. He wanted the appearance of power, not the patience it takes to earn it. At first, he pretended to support me. He smiled when I talked about my startup. He kissed my forehead and told me to keep going when I was tired. But as my company took longer than expected to grow, his patience faded. He began making comments. Small ones at first. Comments that looked harmless to other people but cut deep when you heard them often enough. Maybe you should think about something more realistic. Not every dream becomes a business. How long are you going to live like this? I remember one night clearly. We were sitting in a restaurant, and I was explaining a new software system I wanted to build. He laughed. Not kindly. Not lovingly. He laughed like I was telling a child's fantasy. Then he said the words that still live in my memory like a scar. Arya, I need a wife with a future, not a woman still trying to find one. I did not answer at first. I thought maybe he was tired. Maybe he was under pressure. Maybe he did not mean it the way it sounded. But he did. And a week later, he told me the engagement was over. He said he wanted someone more established. Someone more successful. Someone who could match his level. He said it so cleanly, so calmly, that for a moment I wondered if I had ever really known him. I remember standing there in silence, looking at the man I had loved, and realizing something painful. He had never loved me as I was. He had loved me only as long as I was convenient. Only as long as I looked like a promising investment. Only as long as my life did not challenge his pride. When he left, I cried. Not because I needed him. Not because my life was over. I cried because I had given my heart to someone who measured a woman the way he measured a stock. And that kind of pain does not leave you quickly. It changes you. It taught me that love without respect is just a prettier form of humiliation. So I buried my heartbreak inside my work. I built. I learned. I failed. I rebuilt. I slept very little. I sacrificed everything. And slowly, step by step, my little company became something real. Then it became something powerful. Then it became something no one could ignore. By the time I was 34, I was leading one of the fastest growing tech firms in the country. My software was used in hospitals, banks, schools, logistics networks, and government systems. My name became part of conversations I was not even in the room for. And Daniel, I had not thought about him in years. Not often, not seriously. Until one afternoon, when my executive assistant placed a folder on my desk. "Miss Aria," she said carefully, "there is a candidate here for a senior operations role. He has strong credentials." I looked down at the application, and there it was. Daniel Hayes. For a second, I just stared. Then I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Not because I was happy to see him, because I understood why he had come. He had heard my company was hiring. He had heard my name. He had probably done some research, seen my success, and realized exactly who I had become. And now he wanted in. The man who said he needed a wife with a future was now asking that future for a paycheck. I almost laughed, but I did not. Because I knew something he did not. He was not being invited into a normal interview. He was walking into a room where every word would matter. A room where his past would stand beside him like a witness. A room where I would let him show me exactly who he still was. I said, "Schedule him for tomorrow." My assistant looked surprised. "You want to interview him yourself?" "Yes," I said. "Is there a problem?" "No," she said quickly. "Of course not." But I could see the question in her eyes. She knew there was history there. I did not explain. Some stories do not need explanation. They need timing. The next morning, I arrived early. The conference room was quiet, elegant, and cold in the way powerful rooms often are. Large windows, clean lines, a long table, a city skyline beyond the glass. I sat at the head of the table in a dark suit, with my notes in front of me, calm and composed. I had learned long ago that power is not loud. It does not need to shout. It does not need to prove itself. It just sits there, quietly, until everyone else feels it. At exactly 10 o'clock, Daniel walked in. He looked older, not wiser, older. His confidence was still there, but it had cracks in it now. His jaw tightened when he saw me. His eyes widened just a little before he masked it. He had expected a CEO. He had not expected me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I stood and held out my hand. "Daniel," I said politely, "please have a seat." He shook my hand, and I felt the tiny tremor in his fingers. He remembered. Good. He sat down across from me and tried to smile. "Aria," he said, like my name was still something he had the right to say casually. "You've done very well for yourself." I folded my hands. "Yes," I said, "I have." He nodded slowly, looking around the room as if to regain control. "I have to say, I didn't expect you to be the one interviewing me." "I'm sure you didn't," I replied. That made him uncomfortable. "Good." He cleared his throat. "I assumed the role was more strategic. Senior operations. I have years of experience, and I believe I can help scale your systems." I let him talk for a while. I wanted him comfortable enough to overestimate himself. He gave me his polished version. The version he uses in rooms where he expects to impress. He spoke about leadership, efficiency, management, and growth. He spoke like a man who had rehearsed the mirror more than the truth. Then I asked the first question. "Tell me about the last company you worked for." He leaned forward. "I improved their internal workflow and reduced overhead by 12%. "Interesting," I said. "And why did you leave?" He paused. That pause told me enough. Restructuring, he said. I looked down at my notes. The company had not restructured. He had been let go after multiple complaints about poor management and credit taking. I already knew that. I said softly. And before that? He shifted in his chair. Contract work. Some consulting. Any reason you've moved around so much? His lips pressed into a thin line. I'm looking for the right environment. I nodded slowly. Or perhaps the right door. He frowned slightly. What does that mean? Nothing, I said. Just an observation. Then I opened the file in front of me. I had prepared every detail. His career history. The companies he exaggerated. The projects he took credit for. The references he used that were no longer valid. The truth. I looked up at him. Daniel, you used the word leadership 3 times in the first 4 minutes of this interview. He gave a nervous laugh. Is that a problem? It can be, I said, when someone talks more about leadership than actual results. His expression stiffened. I continued, calm and clean. You have a strong resume on paper, but paper can be edited. He said nothing. I turned a page. You claim to have led a product integration team that doubled revenue. According to the record, you were assistant manager on that project, and the lead architect left before launch because of a conflict with you. His face changed. Not much. Just enough. He tried to recover quickly. There was disagreement, yes, but I was the one who kept things moving. I looked at him. Did you? Then I asked another question. Why do you want this position at my company? The answer came quickly. Too quickly. Because your firm is the best in the market. And because I believe I can contribute at a high level. I tilted my head slightly. Is that why you reached out to me personally before applying? His eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I slid my phone across the table. On the screen was a message. His message, a message he had sent to my company contact line 2 weeks earlier. It read, I know Arya will remember me. I'd appreciate a direct conversation. People like us should help each other. People like us. He had written that sentence as if we were equals. As if he had not once told me I was not enough. As if he had not walked away from me like I was an unfinished mistake. I watched his face as he read it. For a moment he had no defense. Then he tried to laugh it off. I was just being professional. No, I said quietly. You were being familiar. The room grew still. I leaned back in my chair. Daniel, do you remember the last thing you said to me before you ended our engagement? He looked away. I waited. He said nothing. So I answered for him. You said you needed a wife with a future. His face went pale. I continued. You told me I was too small, too uncertain, too far from success. He swallowed hard. Arya, that was a long time ago. Yes, I said. It was. A long silence followed. The city outside kept moving. Cars passed below the windows. People in the building kept working. But in that room, the past had finally caught up with him. I opened the final folder. Let's talk about your current situation. He blinked. What do you mean? I mean the truth. He sat very still. I know your last company ended badly. I know your credit is poor. I know your apartment lease is 3 months behind. I know you have been trying to sell yourself to every high-growth company in the city. And I know you did not come here because you admire my leadership. His face hardened. You've done your homework. Yes, I said. You should have done yours. He looked at me, anger rising now. What exactly is this? Are you trying to embarrass me? I did not raise my voice. I am interviewing you. He gave a bitter laugh. No, this is personal. Of course it is, I said. That answer hit him harder than anger would have. Because I was right. He had made it personal years ago when he judged my worth by my income. He had made it personal when he walked away from a woman who loved him because her dream was not yet profitable. Now he wanted fairness from the woman he had once dismissed. That is not how life works. I folded my hands again. Daniel, I have one opening available for this department. He sat up a little straighter. I'm qualified for it. You are, I said, and he relaxed for a second. Then I finished the sentence. For the assistant role. The air changed. He blinked. What? I met his eyes. You heard me correctly. I am not offering you the senior role. I am offering you the personal assistant position attached to this department. His face went from confusion to offense in seconds. Assistant? He said, almost choking on the word. You brought me here for an assistant job? Yes. He sat back, stunned. That is insulting. No, I said. It is honest. He stared at me, disbelief turning into anger. I have a master's degree. I know. I have managed teams. I know. I was not interviewing for an assistant role. No, I said. You were hoping your name would still open doors. He leaned forward, voice rising now. This is because of the past. You're punishing me. I looked at him steadily. No, Daniel. I am not punishing you. Then I said the words slowly, so he would hear every one of them. I am showing you the market value of your character. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. I continued. When you left me, you made it clear that you believed success determined worth. So I decided to build a life where your standards would eventually have to answer to mine. He looked stunned. I went on. I did not bring you here to suffer. I brought you here because I wanted to see whether the man who once rejected me for not being successful enough could handle being accountable to the woman he underestimated. He stood up suddenly. I do not need this. I stood too. No, I said. You need something much harder. You need humility. He laughed sharply. You really enjoy this, don't you? He looked at the folder, then at me, then down again. His shoulders fell slightly, and when he spoke, his voice was smaller than I had ever heard it. Yes, he said. I need the job. I nodded once. Good. Then we have an understanding. I sat back down. He remained standing for a second longer, as if he could not believe what had just happened. Then, slowly, he sat back down too. Not with confidence, not with charm, with surrender. I handed him the final page. Sign here if you accept. He took the pen with a hand that no longer looked steady. I watched him sign, and while he did, I did not smile. I did not gloat. I did not speak, because I did not need to. The signature was enough. The man who once rejected me as not successful enough had now signed his future under my company name. The room no longer felt cold. It felt finished. When he left the conference room, he did not walk the way he had entered. He did not have the same shoulders, the same rhythm, the same voice. Something in him had been stripped away. Not his dignity, his illusion. And that is often the hardest thing for a proud person to lose. After he left, my assistant came in quietly. Well, she asked. I looked out at the city. He accepted. She studied my face carefully. Are you okay? I thought about that for a second. And I was. Not because what happened was easy. Not because the wound from the past had never mattered. But because I finally knew the truth. The man who rejected me had never been my destiny. He had been my test. And I had passed. Not by becoming cruel. Not by becoming bitter. Not by begging for his approval. I passed by becoming a woman he could no longer define. A woman who built her own future. A woman who turned pain into power. A woman who no longer needed to prove that she was enough. Over the following weeks, Daniel started working under the department like every other new hire. He was polite at first, careful, humiliated. He did not speak much. He did his job. For the first time in years, he had to listen more than he spoke. And I made sure no one in the company treated him unfairly. I did not want cruelty. I wanted reality. Those are two very different things. Sometimes, I would pass him in the hallway and notice how his eyes changed for a second. He wanted to say something. Maybe an apology. Maybe an excuse. Maybe one of those last-minute regrets people offer only after their world begins to shrink. But he never did. And honestly, I did not need him to, because by then, the story had already changed. The woman he once judged had become the one signing his payroll. The woman he once thought was not successful enough had built the success he now depended on. And the most powerful part was this. I did not become who I am because he left. I became who I am because I refused to die inside when he did. That is the part people never tell you. Sometimes the moment that breaks your heart is also the moment that builds your character. Sometimes the rejection that ruins your night becomes the force that defines your life. And sometimes the person who looks down on you the hardest is only standing on the edge of the future you are about to own. So when people ask me now how I became who I am, I tell them the truth. I was underestimated. I was left behind. I was rejected. And I kept going anyway. Because success is not only money. Success is not only power. Success is the quiet victory of becoming everything they said you could not become. And Daniel, he learned that lesson the hard way. He came to my door asking for a job. He left my office with a lesson. And that lesson was simple. Never confuse someone's patience for weakness. Never confuse their silence for defeat. And never ever assume that the person you walked away from will always be standing in the same place when you come back. Because sometimes, by the time you return, they are already standing above you. And that, my friend, is how the story ended. Not with shouting, not with revenge, but with truth. And truth, when it arrives after years of silence, can be stronger than anything else in the room. He rejected me for not being successful enough. Years later, he came back asking for a place in my world, and I gave him exactly what he had once given me, a chance to see my worth from the other side of the table.